Quebec is one of the 13 provinces and territories of Canada. It is the largest province by area and second largest by population. Much of the population of Quebec lives in urban areas along the St. Lawrence River between its most populous city, Montreal, and the provincial capital, Quebec City. The province is the home of the Québécois nation, located in central Canada. The province shares land border with Ontario to the west, Newfoundland and Labrador to the northeast, New Brunswick to the southeast, and coastal border with Nunavut in the south. It borders Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, and New York in the United States. Between 1535 to 1763, Quebec was called Canada and was the most developed colony in the New France. Following the 7 Years' War, Quebec became British colony first as the province of Quebec, 1763 to 1791, then Lower Canada, 1791 to 1841, and lastly Canada East in 1841 to 1867. As a result of Lower Canada Rebellion, it was confederated with Ontario, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick in 1867, beginning the Dominion of Canada. Until the early 1960s, the Catholic Church played a large role in social and cultural institutions in Quebec. However, the Quiet Revolution of the 1960s to 1980s increased the role of government of Quebec in État Québécois, the state of Quebec. The government of Quebec functions within the context of a Westminster system and is both a liberal democracy and constitutional monarchy. The Premier of Quebec, presently François Legault, acts as head of the government. Québécois political culture mostly differ on a nationalist versus federalist communam rather than a left versus right continuum. Independent states have played a large role in politics. Quebec society cohesion and specificity is based on three of its unique statutory documents: the Quebec Charter of Human Rights and Freedoms, the Charter of French Language, and the Civil Code of Quebec. Furthermore, unlike elsewhere in Canada, law in Quebec is mixed. Private law is exercised under civil law system, while public law is exercised under a common law system. Quebec's official language is French. Quebecois French is regional variety. The economy of Quebec is mainly supported by its large service sector and varied industrial sector. For export, it leans on the key industries of aeronautics, hydroelectricity, mining, pharmaceuticals, aluminium, wood, and paper. Quebec is well known for producing maple syrup for its comedy and for making hockey one of the most popular sports in Canada. It is also known for its culture. The province produces literature, music, film, TV shows, festivals, folklore, and more. The name Quebec comes from Algonquin word meaning narrow passage or strait. The name originally referred to the area around Quebec City, where the St. Lawrence River narrows to a cliff-lined gap. Early variation in spelling included Quebec and Quebec French explorer Samuel de Champlain chose the name Quebec in 1608 for the colonial outpost he would use as the administrative seat for New France. Its geography. Located in eastern part of Canada, Quebec occupies a territory nearly 3 times the size of France or Texas. Most of Quebec is very sparsely populated. The most populous physiographic region is the Great Lakes St. Lawrence lowlands. The combination of rich soils and lowlands relatively warm climate makes this valley the most prolific agricultural area of Quebec. The rural part of the landscape is divided into narrow rectangular tracts of land that extends from the river and date back to the Saginaw Rio system. Quebec's topography is very different from one region to another due to the varying composition of the ground, the climate, and the proximity to water. More than 85% of Quebec's territory includes the Labrador Peninsula lies within the Canadian Shield. It is generally a quite flat and exposed mountainous terrain interspersed with higher points such as the Laurentian Mountains in the south Quebec, the Otish Mountains in the central Quebec, and the Tongat Mountains near Ungava Bay, while low and medium altitude peaks extend from western Quebec to the far north. High altitude mountains emerge in the Capitale Nationale region to the extreme east. Quebec highest point at 1,652 meters or 5,420 feet is Mount d'Iberville, known in English as Mount Koblevik. In the Labrador Peninsula portion of the Shield, the far north region of Nunavut includes the Ungava Peninsula and consists of flat Arctic tundra inhabited mostly by Inuit. Further south is the eastern Canadian Shield taiga ecoregion and the central Canadian Shield forest. The Appalachian region has a narrow strip of ancient mountains along the southeastern border of Quebec. Quebec has one of the world's largest reserves of fresh water, occupying 12% of its surface and representing 3% of the world's renewable fresh water. More than 500,000 lakes and 4,500 rivers empty into the Atlantic Ocean through the Gulf of St. Lawrence and Arctic Ocean by James Hudson and the Ungava Bays. The largest inland body of water in the Kaniapisco Reservoir, Lake Mistassini, is the largest natural lake. The St. Lawrence River has some of the world's largest sustaining inland Atlantic ports. Since 1959, the St. Lawrence Seaway has provided a navigable link between the Atlantic Ocean and the Great Lakes. The public lands of Quebec covers approximately 92% of the Québécois territory, including almost all of the bodies of water. Protected areas can be classified into about 20 different legal designations: exception forest, ecosystem protected marine environment, national parks, biodiversity reserve, wildlife reserve, zone d'exploitation control, ZEC, etc. More than 2,500 sites in Quebec today are protected areas. As of 2013, protected areas comprises 9.14% of the Québécois territory. Its demographics: in 2016 census, Quebec had a population of 8,164,361, a 3.3% increase from its 2011 population of 7,903,001, with a land area of 1,356,625 square kilometers. It had a population density of 6 per kilometer square. In 2016, Quebec accounts for a little under 23% of the Canadian population. The most populated cities in Quebec are Montreal, Quebec City, Laval, and Gatineau. Religion: according to the 2021 census, the most commonly cited religions in Quebec were Christianity, religion, Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Sikhism, indigenous spirituality, and others. The Roman Catholic Church has long occupied a central and integral place in Quebec society since the foundation of Quebec City in 1608. However, since the Quiet Revolution, which centralized Quebec, religion have been growing significantly. The oldest parish church in North America is Cathedral Basilica of Notre Dame de Quebec. Its construction began in 1647 when it was known under the name of Notre Dame de la Paix, and it was finished in 1664. The most frequent place of worship in Quebec is the Basilica of Saint Anne de Beaupré. The basilica welcomes millions of visitors each year. St. Joseph's Oratory is the largest place of worship in the world dedicated to St. Joseph. Many pilgrimages, including places such as St. Benedict Abbey, Sanctuary Notre Dame de Montreal Basilica, Marie-Reine du Monde de Montreal Basilica Cathedral, Saint-Michel Basilica Cathedral, and St. Patrick's Basilica. Other important places of worship in Quebec is the Anglican Holy Trinity Cathedral, which was erected between 1008 to 1004. It was the first Anglican cathedral built outside the British Ireland. As of 2021 Canadian census, the 10 most spoken languages in the province were French, English, Spanish, Arabic, Italian, Haitian, Creole, Mandarin, Portuguese, Russian, Greek. The question of knowing of the language allows for multiple responses. Quebec differs from other Canadian provinces in that French is the only official and preponderant language, while English predominates in the rest of the Canada. French is the common language understood and spoken by 94% of the population. Quebec is the only Canadian province whose population is mainly francophone. Economy of Quebec. Quebec has advanced market-based and open economy. In 2009, its gross domestic production GDP of $32,408 per capita and purchasing power parity remains lower than the Canadian average of $37,830 per capita USD. The economy of Quebec is ranked the 37th largest economy in the world, just behind Greece, and the 28th of the GDP per capita. The economy of Quebec represents 20.36% of the total GDP of Canada. The provincial debt to GDP ratio peaked at 50.7% in 2012-2013, and it is projected to decline to 32.8% in 2023-2024. The most industrialized country, the economy of Quebec is based mainly on the services sector. Quebec economy has traditionally been fueled by abundant natural resources and a well-developed infrastructure, but they are undergoing significant change over the past decades. The funding grounded is the knowledge economy. Quebec has one of the highest growth rates of GDP in Canada. The knowledge sector represents about 30% of Quebec GDP. In 2011, Quebec experienced fast growth of its research and development spending than other Canadian provinces. Quebec's spending in research and development in 2011 was equal to 2.63% of GDP, above the European Union average of 1.84%, and we have to reach the target of devoted 3% of GDP to research and development activities in 2013, according to the Lisbon strategy. The percentage spent on research and technology is the highest in Canada and higher than the average from the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development and G7 countries. Some of the most important national Quebecois companies, including Bombay, Desjardins, the National Bank of Canada, the Jean Coutu Group, Transcontinental Media, Québécois, the Metro Inc., Food Retailers, Hydro-Québec, Société des Alcools de Québec, the Bank of Montreal, Saputo, the Crique del Soleil, the Caisse de dépôt de déplacement de Québec, the Normandie Restaurants and Videotron. Export and imports. Thanks to the World Trade Organization and the North American Free Trade Agreement, Quebec was, as of 2009, experienced an increase in its ability to compete on the international market. The province saw its exports increase significantly. NAFTA is especially advantageous as it gives Quebec, among other things, access to a market of 130 million customers within a radius of 1,000 kilometers. This international exchange contributes to the strength of Quebec economy, most particularly in terms of employment. As of 2009, about 60% of exports are made to outside of Canada. In 2009, Québécois has exports to other provinces in Canada and abroad totaled 157.3 billion Canada dollars, or 51.8% of Quebec's gross domestic product GDP. Of its total, 60.4% were international exports and 39.6% were interprovincial exports. The breakdown by destination of international merchandise exports is United States 72.2%, Europe 14.4%, Asia 5.1%, Middle East 2.7%, Central America 2.3%, South America 1.9%, Africa 0.8%, and Oceania 0.7%. Quebec's main economic partner remains the rest of the Canada. In 2008, Quebec imported 100 78 billion USD worth of goods and services, or 58.6% of its GDP. Of this total, 62.9% of goods were imported from international markets, while 37.1% of goods were inter-provincial imports. The breakdown by origin of international merchandise imports in as follows: United States at 1.1%, Europe 28.7%, Asia 17.1%, Africa 11.7%, South America 4.5%, Central America 3.7%, Middle East 1.3%, and Oceania 0.7%. Quebec produces most of Canada's hydroelectricity and is the second biggest hydroelectricity producer in the world as of 2019. Because of this, Quebec has been described as a potential clean energy superpower. Quebec aerospace industry employs 35,000 people and its sales total Canadian USD 15.2 billion. Many aerospace companies are active here, including CMS Electronics, Bombay, Part Whiting Canada, Aero, DevTech, Rolls-Royce, General Electric, Belle Textron, Aerospace Harris, Safran, Sonaca, CAE, INC, and Airbus are among others. Montreal is globally considered one of the aerospace industry's great centers, and several international aviation organizations sit there. Both Montreal and CRIAQ were created to assist aerospace companies. The finance and insurance sector employs more than 168,000 people. The tourism industry is a major sector in Quebec. The Ministry of Tourism ensures the development of industry under the commercial name Bonjour Québec. Quebec is the second most important province for tourism in Canada. Quebec's IT sector has 7,600 businesses and employs 140,000 people. Its most developed sectors are telecommunication, multimedia, and video game software, computer services, microelectronics, and the components sector. There are currently 115 telecommunications companies established in the province, including Motorola, Ericsson, and Mitech. The multimedia and video game sector have been growing fast since the early 2000s. The Digital Alliance, which claims 191 active members in video games, online education, mobility, and internet service, estimates the annual revenue of the sector at $827 million USD in 2014. The macroelectronics sector is made up of more than 100 companies employing 13,000 people. Computer services, software development, and consulting engineering employs 60,000 skilled workers, while the largest IT employers are CMS Electronics, IBM, and Matrox. Many other tech companies are present there, including Ubisoft, Electronic Arts, Microid, Strategic Fast, Eidos, Activision, A2M, Freema Studio, etc. Quebec is considered one of the world leaders in fundamental scientific research, having produced the Nobel laureates in either physics, chemistry, and medicine. It's also considered one of the world leaders in sectors such as aerospace, information technology, biotechnology, and pharmaceuticals, and therefore plays a significant role in world scientific and technological communities. The province is one of the world leaders in the field of space science and contributed to important discoveries in this field. The education system of Quebec, administered by the government of Quebec's Minister of Education and Higher Education, differ from those of other Canadian provinces. The province has 5 levels of education: first preschool, then primary school, then secondary school, then CGP, college education in Quebec, and finally university education. Attached to these levels are the option to also attend professional development opportunities, classes for adults, and continuing education. For every level of teaching, there exists a public network and a private network. The public network is financed by taxes, while the private option must be paid for by the student. In 2020, school boards were replaced by school service centers. All universities in Quebec exist by virtue of laws adopted by the National Assembly of Quebec in 1967 during the Quebec Quiet Revolution. Their financing mostly came from public taxes, but the laws under which they operate grants them more autonomy than other levels of education. Infrastructure development and security of land transportation in Canada were provided by Transport Quebec. Other organizations such as Canadian Coastal Guard and Nav Canada provide the same service to the sea and air transportation. The Commission de Transport de Québec works with the freight carriers and the public transport. Quebec Road Network is managed by Société d'Assurance Automobile de Québec, Quebec Automobile Insurance Corporation, and consists of about 185,000 kilometers of highway and national, regional, local, collector, and forest roads. In addition, Quebec has almost 12,000 bridges, tunnels, retaining walls, culverts, and other structures such as Quebec Bridge, La Violette Bridge, and Louis Hippolyte Lafontaine Bridge Tunnel. In the waters of St. Lawrence, there are 8 deep water ports for the transshipment of goods. In 2003, 3,886 cargo and 9.7 million tons of goods transit the Quebec portion of the St. Lawrence Seaway. Concerning rail transport, Quebec has 6,678 kilometers of railway integrated in the large North American network, also primarily intended for the transport of goods through companies such as Canada Nation and the Canadian Pacific. The Quebec Railway Network is also used by intercity passengers via Rail Canada and Amtrak. Healthcare. Quebecois public health pursue a health policy to emphasize prevention is based in the analysis of health-related data and involves with the needs of population. Like in other nations, the public health policy implemented in Quebec society have enabled Quebecers to considerably extend their life expectancy since the mid-20th century. Health and social services are part of the same administration. The Quebec health system is also public, which means that the state acts as main insurer and administrator. That funding is provided by general taxation, and that patients have access to care regardless of their income level. There are 34 health establishments in Quebec, 22 of which are the integrated health and social service centers. They ensure the distribution of different services on the territories they are assigned to. Quebec has developed its own unique culture from its historic New France roots. Its culture also symbolizes a distinct perspective, being a French-speaking nation surrounded by a bigger English-speaking culture. The culture has also been influenced by First Nations, the British Americans, other French-speaking North Americans like Acadian and Franco-Ontarians, English-speaking Canadian, and some immigrants. The Quartier Latin, English, Latin Quarter of Montreal and Vieux Quebec, English, Old Quebec, in Quebec City are two hubs of culture activity. Life in the cafe and the terrace outdoor restaurant dresses reveals a Latin influence in Quebec's culture, with the Theatre Saint-Denis in Montreal and the Capitole de Quebec Theatre in Quebec City being among the principal attractions. Traditional music embodied with many dances such as the jig, the quadrille, the reel, and the line dancing. Traditional instruments including harmonica, fiddle, spoons, harp, and accordion. The First Nation and the Inuit of Quebec also have their own traditional music. Quebec's most popular artists of the last century includes the singers Félix Leclerc, Gilles Guinoret, Kate and Anna McGregory, and Celine Dion. The Cinematique Québécois has a mandate to promote the film and television heritage of Quebec. The National Film Board of Canada, a federal crown corporation, provides for the same mission in Canada. The Association of Film and Television in Quebec promotes independent production in film and television, while the Association of Producers and Directors of Quebec represents the business of filmmaking and television. The Association of Community Radio Broadcasters of Quebec represents the independent radio stations. Several movie theaters across Quebec ensure the dissemination of Quebec cinema within cinematic installations such as Cité du Cinéma and Mare's Studio. The city of Montreal is the home to the filming of various productions. Many popular Quebec comedy shows exist, such as Cré Basile, Réseau du Capitaine Bonhomme, Rendi de Hahaha, Demons du Midi, La Petite Vie, Les Bourgeois, and Sketch Show. There are also many comedy and cartoon shows for children, such as La Boîte à Surprise, Bobino, La Pirate, Maboule, Fa Fréruche, Ra Ribourgengwe, Ressent Don Contour, Patarfourville, Passer Partout, Robé, Estera, Iniminimagimo, Vasimol, Télépirate, Bibi et Geneviève, Watatato, Kero, Cornemus, Macaroni, Tout, Maggie, Tonton, La Madame, and the first being First Nations. The art of Quebec has developed around the specific characteristics of landscapes and culture, historical, social, and political representation. The development of Quebec masterpiece in painting, printmaking, and scriptures is marked by the distribution of artists such as Louis-Philippe Abel, Cornelius Kurignoff, Alfred Laliberté, among others. The fine arts of Quebec are displayed at the Quebec National Museum of Fine Arts, the Montreal Museum of Contemporary Arts, the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts, the Quebec Salon des Métiers d'Art, and in many art galleries. The Montreal School of Fine Arts forms the painters, printmakers, and sculptors of Quebec. Several sites, houses, and historical works reflect the cultural heritage of Quebec, such as village Québécois, downtown, the historical village of Val-Javert, the Fort Chambéry, the national home of the Patriots, the Chicoutimi pulp mill, the Racine Canal, and the Victoria Bridge. As of December 2011, there are 190 national heroic sites of Canada in Quebec. These sites were designated as being of national historic significance. The tradition Québécois cuisine descends from 16th century French cuisine, the fur trade, and the history of fountain. Quebec's cuisine has also been influenced by running from First Nation, by English cuisine, and by American cuisine. Quebec is famous for its truitière, pâte chinoise, poutine, and St. Catherine's fête, among others. Sports in Quebec consist of essential dimensions of Quebec's culture. Ice hockey means the national sport. This sport was played for the first time on March 3rd, 1875 in Montreal, and have been promoted over the years by numerous achievements, including centenary of Montreal Canadiens. Other major sports including Canadian football with the Montreal Alouettes, soccer with Club de Foot Montreal, the Grand Prix de Canada, Formula One racing with drivers such as Gilles Villeneuve and Jacques Villeneuve, and professional baseball with the former Montreal Expos. Quebec has hosted several major sporting events, including the 1976 Summer Olympics, the Fencing World Championship in 1967, track cycling in 1974, and the Transat Quebec Saint Malo race created in 1894. Quebec have performed well at the Winter Olympics over recent years. They won 12 of Quebec Canadians' 29 medals, and the most recent Winter Olympic in Pyeongchang 2018. They won 12 of the 27 Canadian medals in Sochi 2014 and 9 of 26 Canadian medals in Vancouver 2010. Saint Jean-Baptiste Day is one of the Quebec's biggest holidays. In 1977, the Quebec Parliament declared June 24th the Day of La Saint Jean-Baptiste to be Quebec's national holiday. La Saint Jean-Baptiste or Saint Jean honors French-Canadian patron Saint John the Baptist. On this day, the song Jean du Pays by Gilles Villeneuve is often heard. The song A la Claire Fontaine was the anthem of New France Patriots and French Canadians, then replaced by All Canada, but Jean du Pays is preferred by many Quebecers to be the national anthem of Quebec. National Patriots Day is statutory holiday in Quebec, is also a unique public holiday which honors the patriots with displays the patriot flag, music, public speeches and ceremonies. La Vieille 37, the old man of 37, an illustration by Henry Jules that depicts a patriot of this rebellion, is sometimes added at the center of patriot flags. Moving Day is a traditional where races terminate on July 1st. This creates a social phenomenon where everyone seems to be moving out of the same time. At the same time, the earliest immigrants to the Canadian prairies were French Canadians from Quebec. Most Franco-Albertans, Francisco and Francis Manitoban are descent from these immigrants from Quebec. In summary, Quebec province, its motto, Je me souviens, I remember, a province in Canada. Confederation, 1st July 1867. First with New Brunswick, Nova Scotia and Ontario. Its capital, Quebec City, largest city, Montreal, largest metro, Great Montreal. Total area, 1,542,056 square kilometers. Land area, 1,365,128 square kilometers. Water, 176,928 square kilometers, which is 11.5%, ranked the second by area, which is 15.4% of Canada. Population as of 2021, total population was 8,500,833, ranked the second. Population density 6.23 per square kilometer. Demonyms in English, Québécois, Québécois, in French, Québécois. Official language, French. Quebec time zone, UTC-5. Eastern time zone for most of the province. Summer, UTC-4. Thank you very much for being with us. Today we have focused about the province of Quebec, one of the 13 provinces and territories of Canada. Thank you very much and watch other videos you have made about provinces and territories of Canada. See you in other upcoming videos, and comment and share so that we can grow together in everything. Thank you very much and stay with us. Tell us what you want us to add so that we can stay together in everything. Last time we talked about Ontario, today was Quebec. Coming up is another province, don't miss.